This week, we investigate the social media frenzy around the Oscar Pistorius trial. We find out what makes a strong challenger brand, particularly in the oversaturated insurance market. We'll swing by the Cape Town offices of the advertising agency Ogilvy and end up with coffee and a chat with ad industry heavyweight Matthew Bull, who left South African shores for greener pastures. He'll tell us about major brand trends emerging in the United States. This is Mags on Media. Well, a very warm welcome to you. There is no doubt that the Oscar Pistorius trial has been a major social media event and has resulted in something of an online frenzy. While the figures are changing all the time, this maybe gives you something of a snapshot taste on a single day of this trial. The top countries reporting on the Blade Runner: the United States, South Africa, the United Kingdom, Spain, Germany and Australia. The top people being mentioned with the accused include the prosecutor Gerrie Nel, and the biggest blog, interestingly, found in the city of Helsinki. Correspondent Yashni Padiachi reports.
The news that Oscar Pistorius had shot and killed Reeva Steenkamp first appeared on Twitter. It's now no wonder that his court trial is being played out on social media. Millions of people, including journalists from around the world, are turning to Twitter for a blow-by-blow account of exactly what's happening.
This is the first true social media trial that we've had in South Africa. It's a new way of reporting, but what the Oscar Pistorius trial has done, it's taken us into uncharted waters. The fact that this thing has been broadcast live in South Africa, people around the world are going to be putting pressure on their governments and their justice systems and saying, we want to see justice being done. I mean, more than anything, what this has shown people is people are starting to understand the justice system.
But some journalists may be overwhelmed with the amount of content about the trial as well as other news.
The real challenge for journalists is to, from the noise and the interference, is to actually distill it down and to get the news out of it. And there are ways of doing it. And that's where journalists are falling down.
The media has felt the impact, but so has the law.
Our law grows and evolves through precedent. This is precedent. This case has set a precedent, and it's going to be very hard for the next judge to say, no, cameras can't come in court. Because the first thing that is going to happen is the radio stations, the media and the TV, like they did this time, will go to court and argue for it and use this as a precedent.
While many rely on Twitter for trial updates, there was a Twitter blackout when the pathologist took the stand.
This decision, I don't think, was thought through properly, but I salute her for actually agreeing to what she agreed to on all levels. This case has set all kinds of precedents, and important precedents at a time when the media is under threat. And the threats from government have not gone away. Far from it. They've just gone quiet.
In just 140 characters, Twitter is changing the way journalists work. One tweet at a time. Yashni Padiachi for Mags on Media.
We will have more media reporting on the Oscar Pistorius trial in coming weeks here on Mags on Media. Now, all too often we hear this term challenger brand being thrown about. What does it mean? And how does a brand move beyond a challenger to one that is entrenched and established? And more importantly, how does a brand retain its edginess and challenger status? Is that important? Well, some thoughts on this from Tim Byrne from the Discovery Group. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, Tim.
Jeremy.
Just for the purposes of this discussion, firstly, what is a challenger brand?
Jeremy, a challenger brand is a brand that comes into a market which is really established and has a number of big players in it. And generally speaking, a challenger brand has to have something going for it which is different to the status quo of that particular market segment. I suppose Nando's would be a very good example. I think you could look at a lot of the Virgin products that have gone into quite established markets with a slightly differentiated offering for the consumer, and looked at something kind of a different value proposition which made them different and unusual and gave them a sort of standout value in a relatively quiet staid, established segment of the
so
market.
something which is differentiated on the one hand, but surely it also gives you more license to take marketing risk, given that many of these challenger brands have nothing to lose.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think, I mean, Adam Morgan, we were very fortunate to have Adam out here over the course of the last 2 weeks, and we had a couple of workshops with him. He also gave a fascinating presentation at the Discovery Leadership Summit.
And he's a leading thinker in terms of
he literally coined the term challenger brand. And, you know, his view is that it's all about narratives. And I think that a challenger brand has to have a narrative when it comes into a market. And the fascinating thing about challenger brands is that the narratives can be a lot more engaging, a lot more daring. I think just think about Nando's and how they've positioned themselves. And they can literally upset the market because, as you say, they've nothing to lose. They're not the established player in the game, and they have a lot more leeway to be able to sort of embark on things that capture people's imagination.
It's been said about Discovery that you try to have a challenger brand mentality, but you're not really a challenger brand anymore. You're very entrenched in the marketplace, aren't you?
Some of our brands have reached market leadership positions, but we very much try within Discovery to maintain the challenger brand state of mind. So rather than incumbent thinking, we try to bring insurgent thinking into each one of our brands. We do this on an annual basis with our annual launches, so we never stand still.
Is it more difficult then to advertise or market a challenger brand? We've agreed that risk is important. That's a good thing. You are allowed to take more risk. But within that kind of risk profile, it sometimes is very difficult to achieve that breakout that you actually want.
We've always tried to find the point of differentiation within the product. So we've always tried to see ourselves as a game changer and really work very hard on designing the product to be very different to what's in the marketplace. And once you come up with a differentiated product, which is relevant to consumers but different to the competition, I think it makes the marketing a lot easier. It's not just a spin any longer, it's actually something which is inherently entrenched in the product itself. It's a cultural thing, so if your organisation really has that at its heart, and everybody buys into it when they join the organisation, it's something which basically has its own volition within the organisation.
But it's got to be led and it's got to be harnessed all the time.
Yeah, very much so.
Often, you know, it's just that much easier, isn't it, to settle for the status quo?
It is very much easier. And then I think you have to put lots of mechanisms in place to ensure that you don't ever settle for the status quo.
Ask yourself the question, are you an established or a challenger brand? It's an interesting debate. Tim Byrne from Discovery, thank you very much for joining us. Coming up, how an investment in training has given an advertising agency a real edge, and why there is so much excitement about this concept, Tim was referring to it, called branded content. All ahead when Mags on Media continues.
News that moves. ENCA.com.